Okay, so we can probably get started. Welcome everyone to this week's IVI Coffee&Talk. So this week we'll be hearing from Dr. Mansoor Ahmed. So I'm going to hand over to Mansoor and you'll be able to ask any questions at the end.
So welcome everybody. My name is Mansoor Ahmed, and today the topic of my talk is semantic blockchain, which is providing provenance for Gdpr compliance. So the Gdpr is a regulation in the EU law on data protection and privacy in EU. So primarily the aim is to give individuals control over their personal information and to simplify the regulatory environment. So we propose a novel scheme that can provide authentic, tempered proof and detailed data provenance. So the General Data Protection Regulation came into effect in 2018, and it is applicable to the entities with the origin of European Union and the entities working with the stakeholders from the European Union as well. So those companies who do not comply with the GDPR regulation, they can be fined up to 20 million euros or 4% of their annual revenue. So there are altogether 99 articles and 173 recitals in the GDPR regulation documents. So there are 6 pillars basically which encompasses the GDPR. The first one is the privacy and protection by design. So basically the design system so we should design system in a way that can provide the privacy concerns of the data subjects which are being addressed. So the data subjects can download their data at any instance of their data life cycle. Access to personal data and processing logs should be accessible to the data subjects, and they should be able to right of the data subject is to delete their data at any point of instance from the data controllers or the data processors. And there should be data subjects should give their consent of how their data should be stored or being processed. And the GDPR allows data subject to revoke consent at any stage of their data life cycle. So the motivation is to ensure the patients with the privacy rights. Data rights of the data subjects is the main objective of GDPR, and we are considering health organization as a use case, and the data subjects are patients. So basically, we need to empower the end user so that they should not increase the knowledge to understand the GDPR, as the GDPR itself document is quite comprehensive, and to know the terms and condition, it is very hard for the end user to understand. So the detailed account of the events, what are the different events occurs on the personal information, and we should there should be alerts being generated if found any discrepancy in that. And lastly, protecting patients' data rights to understand the rights of the data subjects given by the GDPR. And we should be able to, we will be developing a solution that could record the provenance, which means what happens to the patient's data at which stage and how their data is being handled. So as I told you before, there are 6 objectives of the GDPR, which is being mentioned on the left-hand side. So the basic objectives of our research is to come up with to identify what are the different processes which are being applied on the personal information. Do the data subjects provide an explicit consent for the processes by which their data goes through? Is there any historical information about the data subjects' data immutability? Is there any single point of failure? Is this solution is cost effective? And do it sync well with the existing web technologies? So the overall goal is to come up with a solution that can record the provenance of the patient data and align it with the rules mentioned in the GDPR PI. So to realize this, we are using two technologies, which is the blockchain and the semantic web technologies. Blockchain is based on the distributed ledger. Satoshi Nakamoto proposed this use of blockchain as a cryptocurrency, and it is being used in different sectors, for example, health, education, and supply chain, and it is immutable data source. So the transaction is initiated, data is packed in a block, then the block is sent to the members, miners and validators, and consensus and approval by the network, and block is added to the chain, and finally it is updated and distributed. So the semantic web represents the next major evolution in connecting and representing information. It enables data to be linked from source to other source and to be understood by the computers. So this is the proposed architecture diagram. We have got the data owners, data controllers, and the data processors. So the data owners submit the data to data controller. Data controller gets the rules and regulations for storage and other information from the ontologies, and it provides rules and processing details, and the data owner give consent if the rules and regulations are fine with him, and the smart contracts is being written and is executed and stored on the distributed ledger. So in the next step, the same contract is being stored in the ontology and into the database as well. So then the data controller gets the processing details and the information regarding the provenance details, rules being applied, and the different stakeholders, which are the data processors and the data controllers. So this information is being combined and written up in a smart contract and is executed and stored in the distributed ledger. So at the next step, the provenance ontology, at the same time, the provenance ontology is being updated. Now the data owner sends a request for the provenance details. So we get the provenance details from the ontology, and at the same time get the provenance details from the distributed ledger as well, as this is immutable. So if there are any discrepancies found, it is being intimated back to the data owner, or if it is fine, again it is intimated back to the data owner. So the project is being divided into three phases, which are the ontologies, interface, and the blockchain. We are using a W3C standard ontology, Prov-O ontology, and there are some other supporting ontologies. In our case, we are using the healthcare as a use case scenario. So there is a hospital ontology, which is a supporting ontology. Along with that, we have got the rules ontology, which comprises of all the rules and regulations to deal with the personal data. So the use of ontologies in a corporate solution can reap many benefits. The most important benefit is that the ontologies provide a standardized form of the data. This data can be consumed by existing techniques, and it can sync well with the enterprise solutions. So in the interface phase, we have got the ontology module, hashing module, databases, and the blockchain. And finally, the blockchain where the smart contracts is being executed. So the main results out of this are the detailed provenance reports from Prov-O, integrity checks of the rules with the hashing algorithm, no single point of failure as it is distributed among three different phases, and the distributed control as well. So as I mentioned earlier that we'll be using the supporting ontologies as well. So the hospital ontology is being elaborated over here, where we are capturing the organizational structure of the hospital, which means that what are the different departments in a hospital, what are the different people working in a hospital, for example, administrative staff, labor staff, medical staff, security staff, etc. On the right-hand side, you can have a look on an instance. For example, there is a medical officer, is an attendant of a patient, and the medical staff has a supervisor who is a medical director. So this is a snapshot of a provenance ontology. We have extended the Prov-O standard ontology from W3C according to our needs. The activity instance sample is being shown on the right-hand side. As you can see, there is an activity source which has got a start time, which has got an end time, which is being executed at some location and being bind with the smart contract. So this consent revision activity was started by, for example, the data protection officer with the code 1003 on the data of the patient 98 to carry out the process 3, which could be addition, deletion, or update. And this task concluded at the data protection officer. So this kind of information is being stored in the Prov-O ontology. So along with that, the most important one is the rules ontology, the GDPR rule, the 6.5, which I have mentioned earlier in the slide. So the GDPR has a GDPR agent, which could be a data processor, a data protection officer, insurer, or the data controller. So the GDPR rules what are the GDPR rules regarding the storage, regarding the consent, and regarding the process, and also regarding what are the security measures which is being provided by any specific organization. For example, if there are any security cameras, firewalls, restricted physical access, so on and so forth. So regarding the consent, it could be what is a consent medium and the consent status. So the consent medium, there could be, for example, the paper consent. It could be a digital consent. The consent status, is it initial consent or a revised consent? So this is an instance of the data processor class, which shows that there is an individual which is known as Mark and has initiated who is a data aggregation officer. So the conclusion of this work is we are protecting the rights of the data subjects is a paramount due to GDPR. And we provide the patients with an authentic and immutable provenance records. We are thankful to the ADAPT Elite S. Besides being a member of a big group at Maynooth University, I'm thankful to ADAPT for providing me a platform for the world-class and cross-disciplinary research environment consistent with my personal career objectives. The research environment together with Elite as funding represents a unique opportunity of growing and excel in my research. So the acknowledgement goes, this work is has received funding from the European Union Horizon 2020 Research and Innovative Program under Marie Curie grant agreement number 801522 by Science Foundation Ireland and co-funded by European Regional Development Fund through ADAPT Center for Digital Content Technology grant 13/RC/2106P2. So for upcoming events, you can have a look or sign up for the newsletter at info@ive.ie, or you can subscribe to our social network channels at Twitter and LinkedIn, or you can visit www.ive.ie for further information. Thank you, everyone.
Okay, thanks, Mansoor. So I think we have a bit of time for some questions, comments, discussions around the topic you presented. So yeah, definitely like consent management and like the provenance of data is extremely important, fits very well into the work we do on data governance, particularly now with the SFI funded Empower program on data governance. I have a question around the granularity of the data. Like, are you looking at individual data elements, data records, sections, tables, or kind of so? Because when you presented the architecture, it seems to be a lot of like administrative work of keeping the ontologies to record this. So how granular is it? And is there an efficiency concern around this? Because that was one of your parameters on the beginning for your solution. I don't know if you have an opinion or an answer or suggestion around this granularity and efficiency solution.
All right. So in this project, we are basically dealing with the personal information, and this personal information is the patient's information. For example, the age. We can take some of the parameters. For example, what is the age, address, contact number, credit card numbers, what are the different diseases, so on and so forth. So only the personal information of a patient will be dealt with the provenance. So what are the different processes of being applied on that specific personal information of a patient. So that is the main focus of the data.
Okay, thanks, Mansoor.
May I ask a question?
Yeah.
Or should I raise my hand?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Can I? Or maybe Marco would like to go first.
Go ahead, please.
Okay.
Ravi, go ahead.
Yeah.
Please.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Mansoor, good to see you.
Thank you.
Interesting project, and wish you all the luck. But I have a question. I'm a bit confused about the link between GDPR and the blockchain, because in network security and security in general, there are many things we can talk about, like authentication, integrity, and secrecy. So I believe blockchain and the whole principle was created to prevent double spending and to increase the authentication through the so-called smart contract. So it's mainly related to authentication and integrity. For GDPR, we are speaking of secrecy of information and controlling what information. So I'm not sure how are you going to make use of blockchain towards achieving maybe better GDPR.
All right. So as you might recall, I have mentioned there were like six key factors, or I should say 6 key phases of the GDPR pie, which, for example, the right to be forgotten, or you can say what are the consent management, or access to the logs and all that information. So the GDPR is talking about overall how the information should be dealt with. So what are the different processes which are being employed on the personal information? So this kind of thing is being done. For example, right to be forgotten. We are not using the blockchain for right to be forgotten because the blockchain is immutable anyway, and we cannot delete the data from a blockchain. So for that, we are using the local database to store that information, and we are storing the same information in the ontology as well. So if at certain stage, if a patient says, okay, I want to delete my data, so you can always delete the data from the database, whereas you cannot delete the data from, we are not putting the whole data on the blockchain, we are just storing the hash of that storage on the blockchain. So if the block is being deleted from the database.
So, sorry, but I don't know, maybe in the midst of all this, are you treating the consent as a smart contract, and that's what you want to do?
No.
Oh, no.
Not taking the consent on the smart contract. No.
Okay.
Because if we do that, even then we cannot change the consent. Later on, after 2 months, I would say that, okay, you are now not able to share my data with the researcher, so I cannot change that consent. So that's why the smart contracts are not used to take the consent.
Oh, okay. 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 Thank you. Thank you, Mansoor.
Welcome. Yeah, Marco?
Yes, even though I think Pandit also raised his hand.
Pandit as
Okay,
well.
okay, I can go. Thanks, Mansoor, for the interesting presentation. I had a question about the semantic web, because we were talking about semantic web and the use of it. But then you are mainly referring to patient data and data that is created at the hospital, so that is not really web information you are dealing with. So it's not clear why you talk about of a semantic web. I understand that you are also considering and using the ontology as an ontology, but is mainly maybe should be you should talk of structured data more than semantic web, because are you considering also data that are coming from the web in your work?
No.
And so why is it semantic web?
Yeah, the thing is, when I mentioned the semantic web, I particularly mentioned the use of ontologies, and why we are using the ontologies. I specifically give an emphasis on use of ontologies in my project. So the ontologies is the backbone of semantic web. So that was the purpose of, okay, go ahead with the overall what semantic web is, and then specifically mentioning the core concept of semantic web, which is ontologies, and the use of ontologies further in my slides. So that was the basically flow of my presentation.
Okay. Oh, no, just because ontology, you of course are part of the semantic web, but are just part of structured data, so that you could just talk of structured data. This is why, and ontology is applied to structured data as well.
Yeah.
So this is why I was confused. So that you are not using the semantic, you are not using the web data.
Yeah, exactly. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Okay. Thanks.
Yes, Pandit?
Hi. So sorry, Pandit is my last name, so Harsh is fine.
Okay, sorry.
So there's a couple of questions. I think even though Mohammed asked, Ravi asked, like, okay, you're not storing the actual data on blockchain, but then you cannot really guarantee the verifiability depending on how you use hashes. So at some point, there may be a chance that some of that data you store on the blockchain may end up being linked to a person and become identifiable. So blockchain and GDPR is not a solved problem. Just FYI. And secondly, there's a lot of ontologies involved in your work. So one is provenance, one is consent, and one is rules. At least that's the one you showed there, but there probably may be more depending on what you do. So there's a lot of projects out there, including my PhD work, but also some European projects that looked at different parts of this, including blockchain, consent, GDPR rules. So why not kind of use those or build on top of those?
We are building on top of those. I just mentioned regarding the Prov O ontology, which is again ODRL and the Prov O ontology of WPS.
Yeah, but like Provo just gives you provenance, right? It doesn't give you GDPR stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I mean existing works that have used like say Provo or ODRL or even constructed their own ontologies specifically for GDPR, or projects that already use semantic web on the blockchain to store consent, like there's BPR for GDPR, other ones. Mm-hmm. So rather than kind of like reinventing the wheel, why not like start from theirs?
There is a consent ontology from, I guess, Trinity College Dublin. They have been working on that as well. But that ontology is quite comprehensive. So we have to deal with our own use case scenario, which really fits into the ontology. So that's why we developed our own ontology for that one. And that is not more even domain specific. Ours is quite of domain specific ontology. So that
okay, so I like, if I'm right, I'm probably the author of that. So I'd be interested in knowing why it's not like usable, or like what's the barrier to use it.
I can share it with you. Yep. Because that question was raised in one of another meeting, and we clarified that this was the case. That's why we didn't use that ontology. And regarding your earlier question, which was regarding okay, some information can be changed at any point of time. So that's why we are storing it at 2 places, in a database and in the ontology as well. So if something is being changed, that can only be you see the page 7 where we were using the information from the Prov ontology and from the database, and then we were matching them together to identify if there is anything which went wrong. So that kind of information is being sent back to the user again.
Yeah, I think my problem was that GDPR is not exactly clear on what happens if you put some data on a blockchain, but say it's not identifiable, but is it still personal data or not? So this is more a legal question, not a problem, but just that there is no clear answer.
Correct.
And I think just one last comment, like there's also the data privacy vocabulary, which I'm involved in. So it gives you like the same stuff, like consent, processing, your agents, as well as a way to say these measures are in place. So yeah, I mean, just if you're aware of that, again, why not use that? And if not, then I'll just put the link in the chat. But thanks.
Sure, thank you.
So if there are no other questions, we're pretty much at 2 o'clock there. So thanks, Mansoor, for a really great presentation and for leading that discussion as well. That was really interesting. And next week, we will be hearing from Gabriel Hogan. So join us again at the same time next week. And the video of today's session will be up in the next few days online. Thanks for joining, everyone.